Please purchase a personal license to remove this message. They ran side by side, not as strangers who had met just the day before, but as brothers in arms who had spent a lifetime battling the forces of evil. They moved in sync, each sensing the other's presence and covering every blind spot. Their boots pounded through endless rows of corn, stalks now swallowed whole by the ink-black night. Each step crushed brittle leaves underfoot, a dry crackle swallowed by the wind's low howl. The night air tore open with their savage passage, cold and thick with the metallic tang of fierce sweat and distant blood. Ahead, the screams erupted, a raw chorus of childish terror, sharp as shattered glass, piercing the dark like frantic beacons. High-pitched wails twisted into pleas, then broke apart, frantic at first, clustering in desperate knots, then splintering into smaller, weaker cries. Something prowled through them steadily, methodically, thinning the voices one by one, silencing the boldest first, leaving only whimpers that clawed at the silence, begging for them to hurry. Each scream ended the same way, abruptly, mid-breath. As if the world itself had been switched off. John felt his stomach hollow with every voice that vanished. By the time they reached the rear of the fortress, the screaming had dwindled to a handful of voices, then one, then none. The silence terrified more than the screams it had displaced, and they ran faster than before. The back of the compound stood in stark contrast to the front. There were neither cabins nor fields there, or order of any kind. Just churned earth and crude workspaces half lit by guttering torches. That led to stacked lumber and the sour tang of a latrine trench. The ground they sloped downward toward a shallow ravine used for waste and refuse. The smell rose from the ravine to meet them. It was not the cloying, peaceful decay of the compound. This was the stench of a butcher's yard after a long, hot day. Copper-rich blood, so deep it sweetened the soil. The acrid bite of spent black powder. And beneath it, the gut-wrenching smell of burned hair and wool. Jack stopped first. John nearly ran into him. Below them, the moon cast its feeble, blue light on a harvest not of corn, but of children. They stood at the edge of the ravine and looked down. There were bodies. Small ones. Dozens. Too many to count. The children lay discarded. Small forms lay tumbled over one another in the gully, a grotesque landslide of innocence. Some lay peacefully, as if tucked into a final sleep. Others were contorted, backs arched, limbs splayed at impossible angles, frozen portraits of final, futile struggle. Among them lay the tools of their ending, not ceremonial cups, but the brutal, everyday instruments of frontier butchery: hatchets, skinning knives, heavy revolvers now empty. A wooden hobby horse, its paint bright and cheerful, lay across the chest of a boy who would never ride it. John's breath caught hard in his chest. God! He whispered, and this time it wasn't a curse. Jack made no sound. His face was a mask of such pure, annihilating shock that it ceased to be human. It was the face of a statue gazing upon hell. A sound pulled them forward, a thin, wet whimper, the last ember of life in a house of ashes. They moved past the ravine, up a slight rise, and the torchlight hit them. 13 torches formed a wide, flickering circle, their light painting the clearing in a hellish, dancing orange. The air here was thick with smoke and a coppery mist. In the center stood the preacher. Ezekiel Stone was immaculate. His black broadcloth suit was unrumpled, his white collar stark. His hands were clasped gently before him, his face tilted upward, beatific, bathed in the firelight as if it were a heavenly glow. He looked like a shepherd satisfied with his work. And his work lay all around him. Hundreds of them. The missing children. They were not just dead, they were ruined. The ground was a tapestry of small, broken forms and the dull gleam of blood-slicked metal. This was not a mass suicide. This was an extermination. A systematic, physical unmaking. John's legs trembled. A wave of nausea, hot and sour, rose in his throat. He locked his knees, forcing the world to hold still. Beside him, Jack sucked in a shuddering gasp that was half a sob. He dies, he whispered, the words raw and stripped. No matter the cost. He dies tonight. John could only manage one word, ground out like gravel. Yes. Then John saw her. A small Chinese girl, her dark haired in disarray, knelt at the preacher's polished boots. Her hands were bound behind her back with rough hemp. She was shaking violently. Across her forehead, drawn with meticulous, terrible care in what looked like fresh blood, was a series of intricate, angular symbols. They seemed to pulse in the torchlight, not wet, but alive. Jack went rigid. No, he breathed, a sound of profound professional dread. He just kill them. He used them as fuel, as kindling. And he chose her as the capstone. You hear that? He called, his voice rich and calm, carrying over the carnage. The silence? That is the sound of faith fulfilled. They believed unto the very last breath. And belief, he said, spreading his hands to encompass the tiny corpses, is the only true power in this forsaken world. It builds kingdoms. He gestured to the fortress. And it burns away the unworthy. He gestured to the ravine. John's Colt was in his hand. He raised it, but the barrel wavered not from fear, but from a rage so colossal it threatened to shake his bones to dust. It was a rage that had no target large enough. The preacher's eyes settled on him, sparkling with patronizing amusement. You are so very late, gunslinger. The covenant is already sealed. You cannot kill me. I am no longer just a man, I have ascended to the dread ranks of hell's barons, those towering tyrants of the abyss, fire-wreathed enforcers born of brimstone and rage. The little girl at his feet lifted her head. Her eyes found Jack's. They were no longer a child's eyes. Where there should have been dark irises and white sclera, there was only depthless, shining blackness, two pools of liquid night that reflected no torchlight, only an endless, hungry void. A window had been opened behind her face, and something immeasurably old and cold was now looking out. From within those black pools, a voice that was not hers, low and resonant as a funeral bell, echoed across the clearing. We meet again, exiled one.